Hello and welcome to Target Language English. Our topic today is the use of the zero article in English. The zero article means that we do not use a, an, or the before a noun. Let's look at the most common cases when we do not need to use an article. We do not use articles with plural nouns when we talk about things in general. For example, I love dogs. This means dogs in general, not specific dogs. Apples are healthy. Roses smell nice. So the nouns dogs, apples, roses do not need an article because we're talking about them in general. But these nouns can also be used in a specific sense, and then we need an article. For example, the apples I bought at the farmer's market are delicious. The dogs next door barked all night. We use zero article, or in other words, we don't use an article with uncountable and abstract nouns when we talk about these things in general. For example, she adds butter to the recipe. Do you drink milk? Freedom is not always easy to protect. She found happiness in her new life. Information travels fast online. But these nouns can also be used in a specific sense, and then we need an article. For example, the butter is too salty. Please put the milk back into the refrigerator. The happiness she felt that day was unforgettable. The information you gave me was wrong. You have the freedom to change your mind at any point during the interview. Most proper nouns do not take an article. For example, names of people, Mike, Audrey, Shakespeare, Mr. Anderson, Dr. Davis, and so on. Names of cities, Dallas, London, Rome. Here we have an exception. We say The Hague with the definite article. Names of countries and states, Greece, Kenya, Mexico, California, Ohio, and so on. There are some exceptions here. We use the with plural country names, for example, the Netherlands, or if it's a group of islands, for example, the Philippines, or if the name includes a word such as republic, kingdom, states, or emirates, for example, the United States, the Dominican Republic, the United Kingdom, and so on. We use the zero article with names of continents, for example, Asia, Africa, Europe, with names of streets, squares, parks, for example, Times Square, Central Park, Wall Street, Fifth Avenue, with names of mountains, Mount Fuji, Mount Everest, Mount Kilimanjaro. But if we are talking about a mountain range, we use the, for example, the Alps. No article with island names, for example, Cuba, Sicily, Maui, Madagascar, with names of lakes, for example, Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, Lake Como, Lake Bled. We usually use no article with names of days and months. For example, we are meeting on Friday. My birthday is in October. Also, no article with many holidays. For example, Christmas, Easter, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Ramadan. Some exceptions are the 4th of July, the Day of the Dead, the Epiphany, and so on. We usually use no article with names of meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner. For example, I have breakfast at 8. We eat lunch at work. They invited us to dinner. What did you have for breakfast? But if we describe a specific meal or event, we use an article. For example, We had a big breakfast. The dinner was delicious. They hosted a dinner to welcome the new director. We use no article with languages. For example, I speak Italian. She is learning Swedish. They study German. Do you speak English? But we use the definite article if the language name is followed by the word language. For example, she is learning the English language. The German language can be difficult for beginners. We usually use no article with school subjects and academic fields. For example, I study history. She teaches biology. Physics is difficult. We usually use no article with sports and games. For example, he plays soccer. She's always talking about chess. Do you like tennis? We use no article with some everyday places when we mean the normal purpose or activity connected with that place. This is common with nouns such as school, church, prison, jail, college, university, work, bed, hospital, and so on. For example, if we say Ben is at school right now, we mean Ben is a student. But if we are talking about the physical building, we need an article. For example, they are building a school in our neighborhood. The school is closed for the summer. Same thing with the noun church. For example, she goes to church every Sunday means she attends a service. We're talking about its primary purpose. But if we're talking about the building itself, we need to use an article. For example, the church is next to the park. He was sent to prison or he's in jail means he's there as an inmate. But we'll say the prison or the jail is closed to visitors today because we're talking about the physical building. She goes to college. She's studying at university means she's a student doing her courses. We're talking about the primary purpose, so we do not need an article. But when we're talking about the building itself, we need to use an article. For example, I parked behind the university. We don't use an article with the noun bed when we're talking about an activity such as sleeping or resting. For example, I go to bed at 10 p.m. or I'm in bed right now. But when we're talking about the object itself, we'll use an article. For example, the bed is comfortable. Similarly, with work, if we're talking about an activity, we do not use an article. For example, Jen is at work. He usually takes the train to work. But if we say the work is difficult, we mean a specific task or job and we need an article. With the noun hospital, there is a difference between American English and British English. In British English, she is in hospital usually means she is a patient, and she is in the hospital may mean she is visiting someone, she works there, or simply she is inside the hospital building. On the other hand, in American English, we do not make such distinction, so we'll say she is in the hospital to mean that she is a patient. We use the zero article when we talk about the method of transport with the preposition by. For example, by car, by bus, by train, and so on. He goes to work by bus. He usually travels by train. But when we walk, we say on foot. For example, she goes to school on foot. Finally, articles are often omitted in newspaper headlines. For example, fire destroys historic building. The full sentence here is a fire destroys a historic building. Company announces new product. The full sentence here is a company announces a new product. This is often done to save space and make the headline sound more direct. Here's a quick recap of everything we covered in this lesson. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.